Welcome to the BeWell program. I'm Dr. Ted Bender, clinical psychologist and the CEO of the BeWell Network. My goal in this program is to educate the public about mental health. If you or a loved one is struggling, please visit BeWellRecovery.com. Our number is 866-317-8395. There is help for the many life obstacles we endure. Today I am pleased to interview actor and radio host David Faustino. Thank you so much, David, for being here. We're so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
I think I have to start with kind of a personal experience with Married with Children. So I'm a kid growing up in the 90s. This is one of my favorite shows, and you were hilarious on the show. And when everybody loves Bud Bundy, and just really cool to meet you and to see you and have you on today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Poor Frank Sinatra got a bad rap for love, an innocent song, "Love and Marriage," and we we tainted it for him.
But you've been all over the entertainment industry. You're really vocal about online social rights issues, mental health awareness, and charities. So I really wanted to dive into that today. And just kind of in general, where do you see today's mental health issues in your world? What stands out to you with regards to mental health?
Well, I'm far from an expert on any of this. Let me start with that. Um, I try to pay attention to the news as much as I can you know, without disrupting the peace I can have in my own life.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's a huge mental health crisis. I live here in Los Angeles. Um, you know, Obviously, it's all over the streets, and we all I think I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of us struggle with mental health issues,
Mm-hmm.
regardless if we're on the streets or if we're in a big giant home and a beautiful luxury home. I think that mental health issues go across the board.
One big part of it, and one of the things I try to really get across on this show, is reducing the stigma around mental health. So when someone like yourself comes on the show, who's so well known, is willing to openly kind of talk about that, we help to achieve that goal by reducing stigma. I talk about this all the time. If you broke your arm, you wouldn't have any hesitancy of going to the doctor, getting an X-ray, and getting a cast. But when we have
Yeah,
mental health issues like depression, people will
yeah.
suffer for 10 or 15 years in silence, and maybe then they'll go get some help or maybe not. But the stigma surrounding it really is the biggest difference, because mental health can cause just as many physical problems as most physical illnesses.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of it is based on trauma, obviously, as you know, how you were raised,
Yeah.
the household in which you came from, the insecurities that may have taken place in that home, the abuse, whatever it may be. All that plays a huge part in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I struggle with my own issues, my own mental health issues that I have to stay on top of. Um,
I've had the privilege of speaking with a lot of actors who had a lot of early success in Hollywood, such as you, and you mentioned mental health issues. How did you navigate those times? Being such a known public figure in every household across America at such a young age. Like, what kind of impact did you experience mental health wise back then, or did you at all? And if you did, how did you deal with it? How did you get through it?
Dude, like utter fear,
Yeah.
like complete utter fear, because the first 3 years the first 2.5 years of Married with Children, nobody really watched the show. Nobody knew about it. It
Huh.
was on this little network Fox that only like 75% of the country got.
Huh.
Some people had to put the rabbit ears up to catch it.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, there was a woman, a very powerful, rich woman, billionaire, who was able to pull Coca-Cola and McDonald's as sponsors from the show, and it became a big news story. And after that, like everybody in America, like tuned in to see what this horrible show was, and it became like an overnight success after that. And from that point on, it was really difficult for me to go out. So from the mental health standpoint, I like people wanted to give me there was two camps. There was the jealousy camp, of course, of kids my age that just want to play or hate, and like just want to oh, that guy's on the show, let's mess with him.
Huh.
um and that's real. But on the other hand, there was a lot of people who just wanted to give me like a lot of love, and still do to this day. It's amazing. And I wasn't I was very closed off to all of it. Like, even if somebody wanted to give me love, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what they wanted from me.
Hmm.
I was very into hiding, always with a baseball hat, sunglasses. I'm still to this day, I wear a hat and sunglasses. Um, and but today I accept the love differently, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But those times were until I learned to surrender to the fame, surrender to the love for the most part, and even surrender to like some of the people who were just player haters. The kids my age, and in that time, that was the early '90s, where everybody thought they were a gangster.
Yeah.
Um, it was the hip hop heyday, and just everybody was walking around thinking they were a gangster, myself included. So, those were those times. So that was what was happening. Mental health wise, I had a really hard time. Um, I had a really hard time just communicating with people on a normal level, because I was communicating with adults all the time on set and listening to them and starting to talk with them like
Hmm.
them, because that's just the way it is. It wasn't like a set where they were like, "Oh, here's the children. Let's bring down the talk." It just went on. So, there was that, you know, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? You know, there was that issue. So it was weird again until I was able to accept the fame and the love, and surrender to it.
It's very interesting. I've heard other actors who had a lot of early success, maybe even in childhood and young adult, say the same thing you just said. Like, to the average person, you would think you'd be the most popular kid in school. Be walking, with fanfare and paparazzi following you down the hallways. But that's not always the case. It's that a lot of people or other kids see something in you that they don't have, and that creates a lot of jealousy and anger.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and it almost turns into bullying, and it's like the
it
opposite
does.
effect.
It does. It
So,
does.
so
It was nice to grow up out of that,
yeah.
to sort of like in your 18, 19, 20 years old. You start to grow out of the teenagers that want to like punk you because
Yeah.
they don't have what you have.
Yeah.
And then it's easier to surrender because now you're dealing with adults, and so it becomes a little bit less challenging.
How old were you when you started on this show?
I was 12 going on
Wow.
13. I was just turning 13, yeah. And so it was it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting growing up on a set. Just all there is to it.
Yeah, and you mentioned too also that, you're growing up in an adult world, not really having a normal childhood by any means. And it's not like you said where, oh, David's in the room, everybody, talk PC. It's almost like you were just treated as another one of the adults and being part of that adult kind of Hollywood world. Um,
Very much so on that set. Yeah,
Interesting.
anything went and
Yeah.
everything did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Thank you for sharing that and being so open to talk about that. What do you think are the most common misconceptions about mental health today, and what do you do to kind of combat some of these misconceptions, if at all?
I really don't know the misconceptions. I mean, I have my own levels of trauma that I'm dealing with, on weekly therapy,
Yeah.
and medications that I take for um by bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
Um, but I wonder. There's a part of me who really wonders about the meds. Like, do they really work? Are they doing the trick? I lost my mother. I lost my mother about a year and a half ago, and my mom and I were like, we did everything together. She cultivated my career. She started my career,
Hmm.
She went everywhere with me. We traveled the world together. She was my accountant. She handled my finances, to a fault, to where I didn't learn to do any of it myself
Uh,
at all. And then she passed. She passed early. She passed at 76 of Alzheimer's. Um, and she had been on a medication, an antidepressant, for like 25 years. And I don't know, there's like this gut feeling, this intuition to me that that brought on early onset Alzheimer's. And that's coming from zero facts. I mean, I've read some things online, and she was taking a pretty high dose. Um, and so I don't know that I don't know that these meds are the answers, because what happens when you come off of them?
mhm.
What then?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think for our listeners and our readers, bipolar disorder is a disorder that is characterized by kind of extremely high highs, full of energy, mind racing, a million ideas running through your mind at once, and it can also accompany some very difficult, impulsive, and erratic behaviors that can get people into trouble. And then that
Exactly.
cycling happens, the bipolar aspect of it, where you hit some really low lows, some really extreme depressions. And there's more than one type of bipolar disorder as well. Bipolar 1, which is the most severe, bipolar 2, which is a little less severe. But unfortunately, really, the state of the science today is for that disorder specifically, medication is primary treatment, as you're well aware, because the dangers of that rapid cycling on and off and on and off are just too great. Now, as you know as well, there are other things you can do to help kind of stay in that balance. Structure and routine is really important. Diet and exercise also really important. But again, I say unfortunately because I hope someday in the future we have better treatments for this, where it's not just medication. But the current state of the science, to answer your question, really is medication first, followed by therapy, structure, routine, good sleeping and eating, and exercise habits.
Right, 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 right. Well, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I try to, get in 2 to 3 work. All I can fit in right now as a new dad is 2, maybe 3 workouts a week.
Yeah,
I try to stick to that, and it does make me feel better. I
good.
also I'm lucky enough to have a steam shower, in my home, where I'm able to, like, not only like sweat out toxins and everything else, but also do meditation and prayer
Mm.
in there at the same time, and so I kind of it's an enjoyable experience for me.
You mentioned treatment and therapy. How has that helped you in your own experience with this? And when was the first time you realized that you had bipolar disorder? How early was the onset?
mm, I'd say I noticed it in I mean, some other people noticed it in me first, because I didn't know what it was
Yeah.
really even. uh I would say in like 1998 ish.
So
I
you've been
started
dealing with it for a
to.
long time.
What's that?
You've been dealing with
Yeah,
this for quite a
I had
while.
had it much longer than that, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was.
Right.
Uh, and then I said, "Man, I got to do something." And the medication, it helped. But it's not a, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a fix all.
Right.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, you still have to do a lot of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, he's right. And again, for our listeners, it's bipolar disorder is a very difficult illness. And David is absolutely right. The medication isn't a cure all. It's not you just take one pill a day and everything's fine. There's a lot of other work that goes into it. You mentioned something that I didn't talk about was meditation, spirituality are also important factors, along with all the other things that we talked about, and good therapy. So I appreciate you talking about that. It really brings me to another question. And in my limited experience out here in California, I've been here less than 2 years, so I'm a newbie to the state. Absolutely love being out here, and I've
Welcome,
had,
welcome.
thank you. I've had just an amazing experience in being able to work with lots of celebrities here on my podcast who've been so willing to talk about the struggles within their own lives. being so centralized in the entertainment industry as you have been for really almost your whole life since you were 12 years old, what do you think the entertainment industry or celebrities can do better to support mental health awareness with everything going on in the world today?
Well, I think they're starting to. I see more and more of it within social
Me too.
media. Um, you know, and I guess some people coming clean. I mean, I haven't really talked about this on um, I haven't talked much about this. I mean, you a little bit on maybe a couple another podcast, but mostly here because this is what your podcast is about. This is
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Um, so I guess coming clean as to their issues, and we all know that we all have issues. It doesn't matter how much money you have. I mean, look at the guy who committed suicide, this Twitch who committed suicide. Uh, and here's a guy who you look from the outside, seemingly has it all.
Yeah.
He's got a beautiful wife. He's got kids. He's got a regular, high-paying job. He's a DJ who loves making music. He's dancing. He's smiling, and then all of a sudden he's committing suicide. I just it's mind-boggling to me.
David,
And you wonder, was he medicated or not?
I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I think about all the time. I spent years as a suicide researcher, and I think about this a lot. And to the lay public, when people see this, they see exactly what you said, right? They see someone who's highly successful, that's got a loving, caring family, that's doing well, or has a job, or has a show, or whatever the case may be. And then people have a
Right.
very hard time understanding how could
I mean,
you
if
end your
anyone's
own
a
life?
candidate for suicide, it would be me before Twitch, is what I'm getting at.
It's you just never know the battles that people are dealing with on the inside.
You don't. You really don't. I mean, you really don't. It's like I said, you would expect me to do something like that crazy, but I mean, he's on TV every day. He's smiling. He's dancing.
Hmm.
He's got a regular job. I'm sure they pay him well. It's just bizarre to wonder what's going on in that in the brain of his. And again, was he medicated? Was he not? Did he come off his medication?
Yeah, good
Uh,
questions.
one thing I hear about is coming off of the medication is extremely difficult. I don't know how true that is because I haven't tried to come off of it really. Uh, but I fear that day if that day is to come.
Yeah, and it would never be recommended to go, cold turkey under doctor's supervision, slow
Of
titration
course.
or lowering the dose. But yeah, you're right that it can be a significant problem to go cold turkey off those kind of medications so abruptly.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
think about, you think about other actors or performers that have passed by suicide. Like look at Robin Williams, right? Remember he was the happiest, most go-lucky kind of person you could ever see if you see him on screen and in his public life. But what we learned long after was that behind those scenes, he struggled mightily. I think one of the celebrity deaths that really hit me the hardest, and still to this day, I still really sad about was Chris Cornell from Soundgarden.
Mm.
I absolutely I grew up in the '90s too, and I loved Soundgarden, one of my favorite bands, and hearing of how he passed and what happened with him, that one really just shook me to the core. It really broke me. And then the lead singer of Linkin Park about a week later. And one
Yeah.
of the last videos of him was of him with his family having a great time, smiling and laughing, and you just never really know what people are
It's
dealing
just
with.
it's crazy. It's wild.
You know,
Yeah.
um,
So
so thank you for bringing that up. One thing I wanted to reiterate is again when people like you come on these types of shows and are open enough and to talk about these difficult and sensitive topics, you really help to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health, like we talked about. This is incredibly important. It's probably and it's really the point of my entire show. I mean, that is if I had to pick one goal, it's to help reduce stigma. When someone like you comes on and talks openly about the things you've dealt with, it helps to normalize it, right? It's like if you have cancer, you go get treated for cancer. Everybody brings you food or asks how they can help. You have depression, and it's no one wants to talk about it. You know, it's like,
Right.
just keep it to yourself, right? So
It's
so
weak. It's you're right. People think get over it, handle it. You know, yeah, they don't understand the depth of it.
exactly. I hear this term all the time. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps, you know, or have you tried
Right.
just not being so sad? I mean, ridiculous questions that we
Right.
ask people.
Mhm.
So I wanted to, you mentioned, you know, all throughout all of the success, you know, a young child star on one of the biggest, funniest shows of all time, iconic show, and all the things that you had to deal with. Can you discuss and tell our readers a little bit about the importance of self care and self compassion and the things that you do to try to help manage your mental health and continue on in your career?
Well, early on, I had a deep yearning for spirituality. I started doing transcendental meditation at about I want to say 20 years old. I started doing it, um, and I did it pretty religiously. Twice a day, every day. Um, and that evolved into different kinds of meditation, breathing meditations, open eye meditations, back to my TM mantra. So it kind of evolved over the years. Um, you know, Sadly, I fell off for a long time. It was I don't know, a loss of faith, or found myself too busy to do it. You know, I don't know, kind of lost my way spiritually along the way, and I'm still trying to find it as we speak. Um, I meditated for the first time yesterday, in that I had in like several months. Um, I struggle with faith in God, in a higher power, I struggle with it, with all the suffering that I see in the world, um, things going on in my own life, so I struggle with faith. I try to believe that I'm a spiritual, being, and I'm able to create and attract things. But sometimes when I see what's going on in the world, and again, myself, sometimes I wonder, is there a higher power, or is this just the chaos theory?
Yeah, I hear you, and I think a lot of people wrestle with those same exact thoughts. You mentioned, when things can get kind of overwhelming in the past, and you've kind of bounced back and forth with it. How has meditation and those different styles helped to center you in your day? For people who may have never tried it before, how does it help?
I'd say it helps really. I would say when practiced diligently,
Yeah,
and practiced as prescribed, 20 minutes twice a day. I know it sounds like not a lot, but it is to get those sittings in. You define the time, especially if you're a parent, or all of these things. But when practiced diligently, and really, using the will to do it twice a day, every day, checking in with your spirit, it does change things. It does center you, and it does bring you back to a sense of being connected with your
hmm.
source.
That's
And
interesting.
then I want to get back there. It's just I'm resistant. There's just a lot of resistance to it.
If anything, it's 40 less minutes of screen time per day, right?
40 less minutes of screen time, 40 minutes less of worrying.
Yeah,
Because if you worry, you can go right back to your mantra, and it really brings a sense of peace around even the issue that you were worrying about in
exactly.
your meditation.
So you brought up some really good points today, and I just kind of want to rephrase for our listeners. No matter what you're dealing with, if you're dealing with mental health issues or substance use disorder issues, there is help out there. You can get the help that you need. Sometimes medication is absolutely necessary. Sometimes there are other ways to treat mental health disorders without medications, depending on your diagnosis. But on top of that, one of the things I think that we can prescribe for most people, mental health issues or not, is taking good care of yourself, practicing self compassion, bringing meditation into your day, even if it's just 60 seconds to start, getting used to the habit of doing it, getting some
Yeah.
regular exercise, like you mentioned, and trying to eat right as much as you can, and really putting a focus on self care is critical this day and age.
Can I add something to
Please.
that? I was talking about practicing diligently twice a day, 20 minutes, but I want to reiterate something you just said, which is like you don't want it to be this all or
Yeah.
nothing thing because that can pull you out of it quickly.
Yep.
So, 10 minutes, 5 minutes is better than no minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes is great. That's the key. But 2 minutes is okay too if that's all you got. Better than no minutes.
As when I was early in graduate school and I was learning how to deliver different therapeutic techniques for different disorders, we talked about mindfulness a lot, which is similar to what you're talking about, and just really being present in the moment. And in one of the treatment techniques we learned, which was called dialectical behavior therapy or DBT, in the mindfulness piece of that, there is a phrase, wash the dishes to wash the dishes. And that's something I still do today. It just basically means
Yeah,
exactly that. When I'm washing dishes, that's all I'm doing. I'm thinking about
dude.
the temperature of the water, the soap on my hands, the smell, and just being present for that 60 to 120 seconds is something I've took with me from grad school and I still do every day.
Yeah, dude, that's the only way to get through dishes, especially if you got a big pile,
Yes.
you better surrender to being present. I do the
Agreed.
same thing. I really it's a little more challenging than sitting down for a meditation for me yet, but I try to do the exact same thing. Just
That's interesting.
wash the dishes.
Wash the dishes to wash the dishes. David, are there any charities that you're supporting these days? And what are you working on in
My
that
God,
area?
I do a lot. They all come out automatically, sometimes to my chagrin. But I support, of course, St. Jude's.
Yeah.
I support 350.org. I support Move On. I do support some mental health uh, companies. I don't know what they are right now. I'd have to like look at my bank statements,
Yeah.
but I do what I can. I don't put in a lot of time, but like here we are now today, so I consider this putting in a little bit of time toward getting awareness of mental health out there.
Yeah. It's
So
incredibly
so
important.
so
And
thank you for giving me the opportunity to, give my story.
no, we really appreciate it more than you can ever know. Like I said before, it really helps to reduce the stigma when people as recognizable as you are willing to come on and talk openly about these kind of things. Think about pre-pandemic or even 10 years ago, this
Mhm.
wasn't happening at all, barely. And now we've gone through the pandemic. We're still going through the pandemic, and if it's done any good whatsoever, it has made the topic of mental illness a little less taboo to talk about, and people are talking about it much more frequently and freely, which is a good thing, a really good thing. Before I let you go, David, there's something I have to ask, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited about. I've been reading online and hearing some things that there may be a animated
Oh, what
series
did
in
I
the
do now?
works. What?
Oh, what I do now? You
No,
said you were reading on things
no, no,
online.
no. I heard that there may be an animated series in the works, bringing married with children back to the screen. Is that true?
So yeah, so the rumor has been going on for a long time, but it's now finally. It started off as live action and morphed into animation, which at first sounded weird, but if you think about it, it's a good idea. We can get away with a lot more humor
Yeah,
that we could not get away with in human form. We have some tremendous writers behind it that are just great. The whole cast is already signed on. Right now, it's simply a matter of I can't name the company, but it's one of the big streaming
yeah.
services working out the licensing fees. And you know, from what I hear, we may start recording somewhere in February or March. So
That's fantastic.
but then again, I want to preface it with this: this is Hollywood.
Yeah.
Shit goes down, and it may never see the light of day.
I
So
know
we'll
it.
we'll see.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I totally
Yeah.
understand what you're saying there. But I know there's millions of adoring fans who would love to see that happen.
And it would be great. It's perfect for Ed. Ed said, "Is Ed's quote? I don't want to be seen on TV anymore. Look at me." And it's perfect for Christina going through the health issues she's
Exactly.
going through,
Exactly.
obviously. And it would be a great gig, a lot of fun. And I could do it from right here in my home.
You said all cast members are coming back. Does that mean your next door neighbors too?
And no, no, I don't believe they're signed on to this one.
Gotcha.
Is
Okay.
the rumor.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking this time to speak with BeWell today. You really are helping many people with this interview, and I really applaud you for that. It's really important to end the stigma of mental health issues if we're going to make a lot of progress in this country regarding that. To our audience, if you or a loved one is struggling, please contact BeWell Recovery. There is help for today's life obstacles. David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You were absolutely great. It was so good to meet you. I can't believe I have you here on screen talking to you. It's been really fun, and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice talking with you.